This message is not for the weak-willed. It is for any man who has overextended, loved without caution, and suffered the consequences of thinking devotion could alter a woman's core. I have seen comrades succumb to this fantasy. Capable men made empty because they confused tenderness with strength. They believed fidelity would be returned. They believed endurance would mend deceit. The reality, however, is harsher than comfort permits. Women have the capacity to destroy you if you permit it, not because they are malicious, but because strength inherently probes for weakness, and affection lacking limits is merely weakness masked as nobility. Machiavelli grasped this 5 centuries prior. He wrote, "Men in general judge more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see, but few can feel." Stated differently, individuals react not to your intentions, but to your command. The instant a woman perceives you are governed by feeling, her respect for you falters. And when respect is gone, desire is not far behind. She might continue to smile, to remain, to murmur your name in the dark, yet desire is no longer what binds her to you. It is routine, compassion, or utility. This is why the lesson today is not founded on animosity. It concerns equilibrium achieved via strength. To love yet remain whole, you must adopt ruthlessness. This quality is not brutality, it is precision. It is the skill of prioritizing logic above sentiment, of discerning when to withdraw, when to direct, and when to allow quiet to convey the message. In love, every man faces 2 paths, being tested or being trained. The weak are tested to their breaking point. The strong are trained until they can no longer be managed. The insights of Machiavelli were not intended solely for monarchs. They were meant for men such as yourself, existing in a reality that values strategy over authenticity. He stated, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." His point was that individuals, women included, adjust their allegiance based on utility. What benefited them previously might undermine you now. If you fail to adjust more rapidly than their feelings change, you will perpetually lag, offering justifications while they are already plotting their departure. Therefore, today marks the start of your metamorphosis, from the man who yields to the man who leads, the man whose quiet holds weight, whose influence is tangible even in his absence. There are 8 shifts to convert your gentleness into tactics, your heart into defense, and your tranquility into strength. Everyone will defy your programming. Everyone will incinerate the deceptions that left you vulnerable. But should you remain until the conclusion, you will emerge changed. You will grasp that ruthlessness is not about being callous. It is about being indomitable. And prior to beginning, I want you to write this in the comments. I will not beg to be respected. Because the instant you cease pleading for respect, the world begins to offer it. The initial shift toward becoming ruthless commences with eradicating the sickness of needing approval. This is because every man who has been shattered by a woman began with noble aims. He desired to shield, to validate, to satisfy. He believed acting as the nice guy would render him essential, yet nice guys are not cherished. They are substituted. You must understand, in Machiavellian language, benevolence without a plan is self-annihilation. A woman is not assessing your heart, she is probing your limits. Each smile conceals an inquiry. Can I influence him? And once she confirms she can, she will proceed. This is not always from ill will, but from human nature's desire for control. The second she detects your fear of her departure, her valuation of you ceases. Machiavelli cautioned that men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. In contemporary terms, that inheritance is your strength, your autonomy, your limits, your masculinity. When you trade it for fondness, you are performing a mental self-execution. You elevate her to sovereign and reduce yourself to her vassal. Observe your surroundings. How many men warp their whole identity to fit the woman they adore? They alter their speech, attire, thoughts, and even the ambitions they chase. They exchange their intuition for obedience. In return, rather than love, they get apathy. This happens because the very things she initially prized, the enigma, the sharpness, the autonomy, vanished the instant he began posturing for her acceptance. This is the reality Machiavelli would impart to you if he lived now. He who seeks to be loved above all else ends up despised. This isn't due to female cruelty, but because the natural order penalizes dependency. Esteem originates from limits, not from supplication. The man incapable of saying no is a man fated to be told goodbye. Ruthlessness starts the moment you cease bargaining over your value. It's when you no longer apologize for your masculine drive, your goals, or your criteria. When you quit justifying your silence and start implementing it. Women are attracted to men who guide themselves, not men anticipating emotional guidance. So cease attempts to demonstrate your uniqueness. Stop trying to mend her suffering, decipher her feelings, or cure her trauma. That is not affection. That is bondage masked as nobility. Allow her to experience your withdrawal when she violates your boundaries. Let her wonder what happened when your warmth becomes resolve. Men who earn respect do not issue departure warnings. They just disappear upon disrespect. Because as Machiavelli said, the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. Embody both. Be pliable when it is strategic, and formidable when it saves you. The equilibrium between empathy and calculation. That is the source of your strength. Drop this in the comments. My kindness has a cutoff. Because until it does, she will relentlessly probe where your backbone ends and your desperation starts. The second shift in your evolution is emotional distance. This is the subtle skill of withholding reaction when others anticipate it. Because if Machiavelli imparted one lesson, it's that the man who governs his own feelings controls everyone else's. The majority of men falter here. They mistake intensity for strength. They believe voicing every emotion demonstrates genuineness. But uncontrolled emotion is emotion used as a weapon against you. When you justify too much, react too strongly, or reveal too much, you surrender the blueprint of your psyche. She then understands your activators, your fears, and your loyalties. And armed with this knowledge, she can manipulate you like a pawn. Each exhalation, each pause, each retreat becomes an instrument of influence, and you fail to perceive it unfolding. Machiavelli once penned, "The one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived." Emotional openness is the very invitation to that deceit. Society, and particularly relationships, values poise, not turmoil. The man who maintains an inscrutable demeanor during a crisis immediately assumes the most powerful presence in the room. You have to acquire the skill of observing without internalizing. If she is irate, hear her, but do not take on her fire. If she pulls back, be patient, but do not pursue. When she tries your patience, offer a slight smile. Not in agreement, but because you have already discerned the motive behind her actions. This embodies the Machiavellian mentality. Do not react based on feeling. Always respond from position. Women hold an innate respect for men who keep them uncertain. It is not enigma they desire, it's the puzzle of understanding you. When you restrain your responses, she starts to pursue comprehension. This is when the power dynamic changes, as she cannot foresee if you will console, challenge, or depart. And ambiguity fosters respect. The ruthless man avoids repressing his feelings. He channels them. His rage is converted into fuel for discipline. His sorrow becomes focus. His quietness becomes authority. That is what emotional distance truly is. It is not frigidity, but command. The masses confuse poise with detachment, yet the discerning understand it is the peak form of intellect. Machiavelli counseled, "A wise man should never suffer his words to outrun his deeds." Your restraint will invariably communicate more than your outbursts. Each time you fight the impulse to justify, defend, or beg, you are instructing others on your treatment. You are declaring, "I am not present to be comprehended. I am present to be respected." Thus, the next instance you sense that intense need to reply, refrain. Let your quiet be your voice. Let absence do the teaching, because when you master your responses, you control the story. You shift from being a participant to an observer, from a casualty to a tactician. Drop this in the comments. My silence is my power, because once your emotions cease to command you, they begin to shield you. The third shift toward becoming ruthless is to cease explaining your value, because the instant you must debate your worth, you have already forfeited it. The men who shatter most quickly are not those devoid of value. They're the ones who persistently attempt to persuade others of it. You see, Machiavelli cautioned that men are impressed more by what they see than by what they hear. This means your bearing, your limits, your silent command. These convey more strength than any oration ever could. Each time you justify yourself to someone already committed to misinterpreting you, you instruct them that your validation hinges upon theirs. This is the genesis of manipulation. Women and society at large unconsciously probe for conviction. When you rationalize your standards, you broadcast insecurity. When you account for your silence, you expose culpability. Yet, when you operate with tranquil assurance, the whole environment adapts to your wavelength. Your self-belief becomes the law regulating others' conduct. Do not argue your worth. Prove it. Through distance, through action, through consistency. If she challenges your effort, cease explaining and commence receding. If she violates your limits, don't debate. Vanish. Because your absence will invariably impart what your words cannot. Machiavelli grasped this principle of the mind. He penned, "A prince never lacks legitimate reasons to break his promise." What he meant was not deceit. It was strategy. Do not allow devotion to your reputation to ensnare you in perpetual validation. Society does not reward truth-sayers. It rewards those who discern when to maintain silence. At times, the optimal method to prove your value is to depart so noiseflauntly that they grasp their loss only when it's too late. Consider this. How often have you excessively detailed your motives to someone who was indifferent? You were speaking to protect your image while they were watching to gauge your vulnerability. Each emotional justification provides them with data. Every concession grants them advantage. This is why Machiavellian men are economical with words, because enigma safeguards what justification ruins. In relationships, debating your value is akin to bargaining with a thief. The more you verbalize, the more they seize. The ruthless man understands that explanations are for peers, not for controllers. You owe no dissertation for your quiet, no rationale for your withdrawal, no apology for your criteria. When you stop justifying yourself, others start explaining you. They will formulate theories, suppositions, and rumors. Permit them. Bewilderment is complementary promotion for strength. The less they comprehend you, the more they esteem you. So abandon the effort to convince anyone that you're a decent man. Let your self-control prove it. Quit attempting to show that you're loyal. Allow your withdrawal to prove it. Because the most boisterous man in the room is seldom the strongest. He is just the most frantic to be acknowledged. Drop this in the comments. I don't explain, I execute. Because the instant you cease defending yourself, you begin to define yourself. The fourth shift in becoming ruthless is learning to compensate respect, not emotion. Because every man who has been shattered by a woman committed one critical error. He mistook emotional fervor with fidelity. He accepted tears as authenticity, passion as durability, that apologies meant transformation. Machiavelli, however, would have scoffed at that delusion. He understood that emotion is the simplest currency to forge. Respect, conversely, is the sole currency that holds value. Women, like all people, Probe where strength resides. They will weep, retreat, or incite not always to harm you, but to assess you, to determine if you are governed by principle or by impulse. And each time you respond with emotion, you validate their control. Each time you stay anchored, you validate yours. Machiavelli once stated, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." It implies individuals alter their conduct based on their advantage. So do not compensate apologies. Compensate consistency. Don't validate feelings. Validate respect. The man who affirms sentiment over actions coaches the world to manipulate him via theatrics. Observe carefully. When a woman discovers that tears can purchase her forgiveness, she'll weep every time she desires control. When she ascertains that silence makes you pursue, she'll disappear every time she desires power. When she finds that anger makes you justify, she'll initiate conflict to drain you. That is not affection. That is tactics. And you're failing because you decline to participate. The ruthless man does not compensate emotion. He analyzes it. He observes patterns. He attends to intonation. He gauges exertion. And when conduct fails to align with speech, he replies not with orations, but with distance. Absence is the penalty manipulators dread most because it removes their audience. When a woman understands her feelings no longer sway you, she will either adapt or depart. Both results serve your tranquility. The sole method to remain powerful in love is to make respect the price of admission. If she communicates with scorn, she forfeits access. If she disregards your time, she forfeits your presence. If she trifles with your trust, she forfeits your confidence forever. Machiavelli held that love without fear descends into anarchy. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Fear here doesn't mean terror. It means consequence. A woman must understand that disrespect has a cost, not in yelling, not in warnings, but in disappearing without noise. The man unable to implement loss will perpetually be regarded as disposable. So when she tests you, do not debate, do not instruct, do not beg, retreat serenely. Allow absence to become the mirror that shows her own conduct. When you cease compensating emotion and start compensating respect, every dynamic in your life changes. Individuals will begin to weigh their words before addressing you, because they'll recognize this man does not yield for drama, he yields for dignity. Drop this in the comments. Respect earns access. Because once you make that your principle, no one will again mistake your decency for vulnerability. The fifth shift in becoming ruthless is learning to build power in isolation. This is because every man who dissolves his identity in relationships does so for a single motive. He is afraid of being alone. This fear renders him compliant. It causes him to give too much, explain too much, and remain too long. But Machiavelli would inform you of this. The man who depends on others for his footing will invariably suffer the greatest collapse. Isolation is the place you stop being addicted to validation and commence forging internal command. It is where you learn to exist without the accolades of others, especially the women who previously stroked your ego sufficiently to maintain your obedience. Every man must endure this banishment. That stark period when the phone stops ringing, when affection vanishes, and when diversion ceases to dull the senses. Because that is the crucible. That is where ruthlessness is born. Most men confuse this isolation for a penalty, but in truth, it is a refinement. Solitude removes all that is superfluous. The disingenuous friends, the psychological dependencies, the fantasy that you require another to be whole. In that stillness, you rediscover the most formidable weapon in existence, self-reliance. Machiavelli wrote, "A wise ruler relies on his own arms," meaning never be contingent on anyone else for the strength you can cultivate yourself. Cease expecting someone to inspire you, cherish you, or save you. The ruthless man serves as his own redeemer. His time in isolation becomes a workshop where he forges routines, self-control, assets, and mental fortitude. He does not squander solitude pursuing ease. He leverages it to become too strong to ignore. Women perceive this energy innately. The man who can stand alone radiates an aura they cannot manipulate. Indifference. It is not that he is cold. He is complete. He's not unreachable. He's discerning. His solitude renders him an enigma because he has stopped pursuing connection to feel validated. This autonomy incites both fear and attraction. Fear because they cannot control him. Attraction because they cannot define him. In isolation, you hone what society dulled in you. You restore your focus, your masculine sharpness, your endurance. You learn to appreciate quiet, to plan strategically, to observe without requiring perpetual engagement. This is the bedrock of Machiavellian command, the capacity to function with zero emotional reliance. When you master solitude, relationships cease to be about survival. You no longer pursue what makes you whole. You select what enhances you. And that's the transition that separates the strong from the desperate. Machiavelli stated, "Fortune favors the bold." But boldness is not clamor. It is maintaining stillness while others erupt in chaos. It is refusing to grasp for ease when hardship builds your strength. Solitude is the proving ground for dominance, because the man who governs himself requires no one's validation to rule his existence. Drop this in the comments. My solitude builds empires. Because once you stop fearing being alone, no one can use loneliness to control you again. The sixth shift is perhaps the most challenging for men, conditioned to believe that love must be unconditional. It shouldn't. Not for you. Not again. Because unrestricted access is how you get shattered. Each time you render yourself excessively available, you degrade your presence to ambient noise. Machiavelli perceived this centuries ago when he wrote, "Men esteem lightly what they obtain too easily." He wasn't referencing money or thrones. He was referencing influence. Access is influence. Every man bears a form of sovereignty within him, his time, his focus, his defense, his vitality. These are the assets that women innately desire. But this is the principle that distinguishes sovereigns from fools. What is not earned will never be valued. When a woman is not required to earn your attention, she learns to regard it like air. Perpetually present, always free, always ignored. You must condition yourself to handle access as a privilege, not a given. Quit replying to every text the instant it lands. Cease being emotionally receptive just because she has a whim to connect. Stop allowing others to feel ownership over your vitality. When you offer your company freely to those who haven't proven allegiance, you instruct them that your time costs nothing, and nothing of worth survives without price. Machiavelli cautioned that men are driven by two principal impulses, love and fear. In your relationships, balance both. Let her feel your affection when she respects your limits and your absence when she tests them. The instant she grasps that losing you has repercussions, she modifies her conduct, and that is not manipulation. That's guidance. The ruthless man never inflicts emotional penalties, he simply revokes access. His tranquil quiet becomes the reflective surface that compels introspection. When a woman cannot contact you, she is compelled to confront herself. That's where respect is born, in the absence of your validation. The typical man worries that if he withdraws, she'll depart. The powerful man understands that if she departs, she was never genuinely his to begin with. A woman who esteems you will battle for proximity. A woman who doesn't will escape accountability. Both results provide your clarity. Your access must be secured through consistency, through joint endeavor, through tranquility. You are not a present to be unwrapped at leisure. You are an honor to be upheld through respect. Each time you compensate allegiance with your company and penalize manipulation with your withdrawal, you recalibrate the equilibrium of power in your life. And presently, people will start to operate differently around you. They will weigh their words. They will handle your time with consideration. They will understand that your attention is no longer an assumption, it's a concession. That's the mindset of authority Machiavelli detailed, to make your presence feel like an honor, not a habit. Drop this in the comments. My access must be earned. Because when people have to earn you, they will not risk your loss so heedlessly again. At the end of it all, recall this. Machiavelli never advocated cruelty. He advocated control. He knew that love lacking power degrades into servitude, and benevolence lacking limits becomes a summons for anarchy. Women do not ruin strong men. They reveal the weak ones masquerading as strong. And this is the reason you were required to adapt. You had to incinerate the fantasy to become indomitable. The ruthless iteration of you isn't resentful. He's controlled. He does not pursue affection. He draws respect. He does not debate. He implements quiet. He does not plead. He recedes. Because he has learned that tranquility without command is merely deferred suffering. You have navigated every shift. You have eradicated your need for validation, mastered emotional distance, ceased justifying, compensated respect, forged power in isolation, and converted access into an honor. You now stand where very few men ever reach, at the nexus of affection and authority, empathy and command. This is the equilibrium Machiavelli described. This is the core of being feared and respected. So do not offer apologies for your transformation. The world once required your gentleness. Now it requires your steel. Drop this final affirmation in the comments. I am the man she cannot break. If this message resonated with you, hit the like button, send it to a brother who must awaken, and subscribe to the channel for further lessons that will make you stronger, wiser, and impossible to control. You are not cold. You are clear. And starting today, you govern yourself.